What is the best way to introduce a filly that has just weaned to 2 geldings? I have been using the Fundamentals and Colt Starting with her thus far, and I bring her home next weekend. I was thinking of introducing one horse at a time while controlling their feet, then possibly having a pen close to hers.
When we're talking about introducing a weanling to adult horses, there's a couple of things you need to think about here. My first advice to you would be don't do it. That's my first answer right off the bat. For a couple of reasons. I don't really know what kind of weanling are we talking about. Are we talking about a really young weanling, small, or are we talking about something that's been on its mama longer than it probably should and it gets around pretty good? It's been out in the pasture and it can handle that, okay? So I'm gonna kind of give you some ideas. When Clinton used to breed a lot more horses in Texas and we had mares and foals out, we'd have these mares and foals, once the foals got a little bigger, we'd have them out together. And they'd be out there sort of as a herd, but there's a few things to consider there. Number one, they're in a big area. They've got to be in a big enough area that those babies can get away from another horse. If something gets to running after them, or kicking at them, you can't have something in a 20 by 100 run or something like that. You're just going to get these babies chased through the fence and you're going to get them hurt, okay? When we're talking about away from other mares, and now we're actually talking about a couple of geldings, I'd be considering the same thing. So my first go-to, if you want to put her in a pen beside those geldings, as long as it's a safe fence, not a barbed wire fence, not something that they can get to kicking and have a big disaster like that, I wouldn't really have a problem with that. But I would leave them like that for a couple of months. You said in there, introduce them one at a time. That's not a bad idea. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would prefer that. And make sure that when you turn them, if you do decide to turn them out together, make sure they're in a big enough area, again, that horse can get to moving around. If that gelding gets to chasing after them or something like that, they're not going to get hemmed up in a corner, hemmed up in the fence. So common sense would say, be around when this is going on. Don't turn her out there and go to lunch. Hang around the house so that you can watch this. Would it do a lot of good for you to control their feet when you're putting them out? Not really. Horses have got to sort out their own pecking order. You can't sort that out for them. So I would much prefer this weanling be much more mature, that I feel like it can fend for itself. I'm not going to say it's going to run the herd. It's not going to run these other geldings, but that it's got enough stamina that when it runs a couple of laps around there, this thing is not about to collapse like a little baby foal would, so that it can get away and defend itself and so on. Another thing you might consider, this is assuming a lot, okay? But if I had my choice between your 2 geldings, I would turn her out with the one first that I think is the most docile, the one that's not he's not the most aggressive, he's not the one that's always selling up to the other one and kicking and that sort of thing. I would start with that. But if let's just say you say, hey, both of these geldings are kind of old jerks, they're both kind of grumpy like that. Another thing you could do is you could teach one of those geldings, you could teach them, go through the sideline hobbling process with them, and you could turn them out, sideline the gelding. A sideline is a front and a back leg hobbled together. So the horses can move around, they can walk, trot, they can even canter to some extent, but it's like going around with your shoelaces tied together, essentially. And what that does is it kind of, if I'm really concerned about one of them getting aggressive with this baby and hurting it, you could sideline hobble the gelding and turn him out there with her. That way he's got a little bit of a handicap, a little bit of a disadvantage, gives that baby a chance to get away. We've done that in the past. If we've got, every now and then you get an old cranky mare that just always beating up on everybody and hemming them up in the corner and just relentless. More than just the typical get a little aggressive with the other horses and assert its dominance. That's horse stuff. There's always going to be some kicking and squealing and biting, and I don't really have an issue with that. But when it's getting bad where, okay, something's going to get hurt here, you could go that route. Now, if you were going to do something like that, here we've created more work again. You've got to go teach that gelding how to hobble, how to have the sideline hobbles on. You don't want to just turn him out there and hope for the best. Hope's not a strategy. So you need to go through reference the hobbling series on the app. That way you can go through that and teach him how to sideline a hobble. I don't really care if he knows the rest of the hobbling, but at least he knows that. And then the last thing with that is you got to make sure if you do something like that, he can't be turned out in a wooded pasture with stumps and things he could get that hobble hung up on where he could get hung up and hurt himself, okay? So there's a lot of things to consider there. My first answer to you would be I wouldn't. I would let the baby mature up quite a bit more. When it starts getting closer to being a yearling, then I'd consider turning it out with some other horses, and I would do it one at a time, just like you said, okay? But the hobbling is there as an option if you want to consider that. Some things to think about there.
Take your horsemanship to the next level. The No Worries Club Premium membership is your ultimate portal to complete your horse training. You'll have access to Clinton's complete training library, thousands of hours of step-by-step instructional videos. You'll master all aspects of horsemanship, from fundamentals to trick training. You'll have access to our exclusive social network that connects you with thousands of dedicated horsemen from around the world. You'll have the method available wherever you are and accessible through the web, your phone and tablets, or your favorite streaming devices. You'll receive 8 all-new training videos per year and the quarterly No Worries Journal, as well as access to the ever-growing video library, Q&As, performance horse series, blogs, and more. But that's not all. You also get free tickets to walkabout tours and priority access to the latest news coming from Down Under horsemanship. Not to mention VIP pricing on all of Clinton's must-have training tools. So what are you waiting for? Unlock the ultimate access and jumpstart your training program today.